The crystal walls of Princess Kira's chambers reflected her pale blue skin as she paced back and forth. Her long silver hair swayed with each nervous step. Today would change her life forever, and she hated every moment of it. "Princess, your father requests your presence in the royal hall," announced her servant, Nala, from the doorway. Kira stopped walking and turned to face her friend. "Is he here already?" "The human?" Nala nodded slowly. "The transport ship arrived an hour ago. Emperor Thex wants you to meet your future husband." Future husband. The words made Kira's stomach twist with fear. She had heard stories about humans for years. They were violent creatures who solved problems with weapons and force. During the recent border wars, human soldiers had destroyed entire space stations without mercy. Now her father wanted her to marry one of them. "I cannot do this, Nala," Kira whispered. "How can father expect me to bond with a monster?" "The alliance is important, Princess. Our two species need peace." Kira knew this was true, but it did not make the situation easier. The Valdorian Empire had fought humans for 3 years. Thousands had died on both sides. Now the leaders wanted to end the war with a marriage between their royal families. Kira was the price of peace. She walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights was Earth, the human homeworld. Soon she would have to leave her home and live there with a stranger who might hurt her. "Tell my father I will be there soon," Kira said. Nala bowed and left the room. Kira spent a few more minutes looking at the stars, then put on her formal robes. The blue and silver fabric felt heavy on her shoulders. She placed the royal crown on her head and walked toward her destiny. The royal hall buzzed with activity when Kira arrived. Valdorian nobles stood on one side of the room while human diplomats gathered on the other. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a blade. Emperor Thex sat on his throne at the far end of the hall. His golden skin showed his age, but his eyes still held power. Next to him stood a human male who made Kira's breath catch in her throat. The human was tall and broad, with dark hair and darker eyes. 3 long scars ran down the left side of his face from his forehead to his jaw. His hands looked strong enough to break bones. He wore a simple black uniform with military badges that Kira did not recognize. "Daughter, come forward," Emperor Thex called out. Kira walked down the center of the hall. Every step felt like walking toward her own death. The human watched her approach with cold, calculating eyes. She could feel his gaze studying her like a predator studying prey. "Princess Kira, meet Colonel Ben Torres of the Earth Defense Force," her father announced. "Your future husband." Ben stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Princess, it is an honor to meet you." His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. Kira looked into his scarred face and saw no warmth, no kindness. Only the hard expression of a killer. "I reject this marriage," Kira announced loudly. Gasps filled the hall. Several Valdorian nobles stepped forward in shock. The human diplomats began talking quickly among themselves. "Daughter, you cannot," Emperor Thex started to say. "I will not marry a monster," Kira interrupted, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. "I have heard the stories about human cruelty. I have seen the reports from our border worlds. This man has probably killed innocent people. I would rather die than bond my life to his." The hall erupted in chaos. Valdorian nobles shouted about duty and honor. Human diplomats demanded explanations. Embassy guards moved closer to their weapons. Through it all, Ben Torres stood perfectly still. His scarred face showed no emotion as insults flew around him. He did not defend himself or argue back. He simply watched Kira cry and listened to her words. "Silence," Emperor Thex roared. His voice echoed off the crystal walls until everyone stopped talking. "We will discuss this matter privately. Clear the hall." Nobles and diplomats began filing out, still muttering to each other. Kira wiped tears from her face and prepared for her father's anger. "Princess Kira," Ben said before anyone else could speak. His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "I understand your feelings. Perhaps it would be best to postpone this arrangement." Everyone turned to stare at him. Kira had expected him to demand the marriage continue or threaten her family. She had not expected him to agree with her. Colonel Torres, one of the human diplomats, said quickly, "Surely we can work through this misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Ben replied. "The princess does not want this marriage. I will not force someone to accept a life they fear." Emperor Thex studied the human with new interest. "You would give up this alliance?" "I would give up anything to avoid causing unnecessary pain," Ben answered. "My people want peace, but not at the cost of an innocent person's happiness." Kira stared at him in confusion. This was not how she expected a ruthless warrior to act. Where was the violence she had heard about? Where was the cruelty? We will speak more of this tomorrow, Emperor Thex decided. Colonel Torres, you are welcome to stay aboard our ship as our guest. Perhaps time will help us find a solution. Ben bowed again. Thank you for your hospitality, Your Majesty. As the remaining people left the hall, Kira noticed Ben walk away without looking back at her. Most males would have tried to convince her or win her favor. This human seemed content to let her go. That evening, Kira could not sleep. She kept thinking about Ben's reaction to her rejection. Every story she had heard said humans were aggressive and demanding. Yet he had accepted her decision without argument. Unable to rest, she decided to walk through the ship's corridors. The Valdorian royal vessel was huge, with many levels and sections. Late at night, most areas were empty and peaceful. Kira found herself in the observation deck, a large room with transparent walls that offered views of space. She often came here to think when she felt troubled. To her surprise, someone else was already there. Ben Torres sat alone on one of the viewing benches, staring out at the stars. He had removed his formal jacket and rolled up his sleeves. In the soft starlight, he looked less frightening and more tired. Kira hesitated at the doorway. Part of her wanted to leave before he noticed her. But curiosity made her stay and watch. Ben's shoulders were slumped with exhaustion or sadness. His scarred hands rested on his knees. He seemed lost in thought as he gazed at the distant lights. You can come in, he said without turning around. I know you are there. Kira jumped slightly. She had thought she was being quiet. I did not mean to interrupt, she said. You are not interrupting anything important. Ben finally turned to look at her. In the starlight, his dark eyes seemed less cold. I was just thinking. Against her better judgment, Kira stepped into the room. About what? Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he said, about home. About the people who are counting on this alliance to keep them safe. Kira felt a stab of guilt. She had only thought about her own fears, not about the consequences of her rejection. You must be angry with me, she said. No. Ben replied simply. I understand why you are afraid. You do? Ben gestured to his scarred face. I know what I look like. I know what stories you have heard about humans. If I were you, I would be afraid too. Kira moved closer to the bench where he sat. The scars, she said carefully. How did you get them? Ben touched the marks on his face without thinking. A plasma explosion during the Battle of Kepler Station. I was helping evacuate civilians when the power core overloaded. You were saving people? Trying to, Ben said. We did not save enough. There was deep pain in his voice when he spoke those last words. Kira realized she might have been wrong about him. The stories I heard said humans enjoy fighting, she said. They said your people love war. Ben looked at her with surprise. Who told you that? Everyone. The military reports, the news broadcasts, the court advisors. They all say humans are violent and cruel. Ben was quiet for a long time. Then he said, some humans are violent. Some enjoy fighting. But most of us hate war just as much as your people do. Then why do you fight? Because sometimes fighting is the only way to protect innocent people, Ben explained. Your border raiders were attacking human colonies. Families were dying. We had to stop them. Kira had never heard this side of the story. In Valdorian reports, humans were always the aggressors. But you killed so many, she said. Ben's face darkened with grief. Yes, I killed many. Every night I see their faces in my dreams. Every morning I wake up wishing there had been another way. You regret it? I regret all of it, Ben said firmly. Every death, every battle, every moment of suffering this war has caused. That is why I agreed to this marriage. I hoped it might prevent more killing. Kira stared at him in shock. This was not the monster she had imagined. This was someone who carried the weight of war like a heavy burden. But you agreed to give it up, she pointed out. When I rejected you, you did not argue. Ben looked back out at the stars. What kind of person would I be if I forced someone to marry me against their will?
What kind of peace would that create?
My father says duty comes before personal feelings. Your father is trying to protect his people, Ben said. But protecting people should never mean destroying their freedom to choose. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Kira found herself studying Ben's profile in the starlight. Without the harsh lighting of the royal hall, he looked different. The scars were still there, but they seemed like marks of sacrifice rather than cruelty. Can I ask you something? Kira said. Of course. Do you want to marry me?
Honestly?
Ben turned to meet her eyes. I want peace between our peoples. I want the killing to stop. As for marriage, he paused. I do not know you well enough to want or not want that. I only know that you deserve better than a stranger who frightens you. What if I were not frightened? But you are frightened, and you have good reasons to be. Kira considered his words. You think I am right to reject you? I think you are wise to trust your instincts, Ben said. You should not have to give up your happiness for politics, even if it means more war. Ben's expression grew sad. Even then, some prices are too high to pay. Kira felt something shift inside her chest. She had expected Ben to be selfish and demanding. Instead, he was willing to sacrifice his mission for her well-being. The reports about you, she said slowly. They called you ruthless. In battle, yes. I do whatever is necessary to complete the mission and protect my people. But here with me, you are not ruthless at all. Ben smiled slightly, the first time she had seen any warmth in his expression. Being ruthless in war does not mean being cruel to innocent people. It means making hard choices to save lives. What kinds of hard choices? Ben was quiet for a moment, as if deciding whether to trust her with painful memories. At Kepler Station, he finally said, I had to choose between saving a group of children or stopping the raiders from escaping. If the raiders escaped, they would attack more colonies. More families would die. What did you choose? I saved the children, Ben said quietly. 37 little ones made it to the escape pods. But the raiders got away and attacked 2 more settlements before we caught them. You chose to save lives you could see over lives you could not. Yes, and every day since then, I wonder if I made the right choice. Kira felt tears forming in her eyes again, but this time they were not tears of fear. They were tears of understanding. You carry all that pain alone? It is my responsibility, Ben said. The people who follow me should not have to bear the weight of my decisions. That sounds very lonely. Ben looked at her with surprise, as if no one had ever considered his feelings before. Sometimes, he admitted, but loneliness is a small price to pay if it keeps others safe. They sat in silence again. Kira found herself wanting to comfort this scarred warrior who carried so much guilt and responsibility. The monster she had imagined was gone, replaced by a man who had sacrificed his own peace of mind for others. Colonel Torres, she said. Please, just Ben. Ben, she repeated, liking how his name sounded. May I ask why you have no family? Surely someone would want to marry a war hero. Ben's expression darkened again. What kind of life could I offer someone? I wake up screaming from nightmares. I see enemies in every shadow. I carry weapons even to peaceful meetings like this one. He touched the small pistol at his side. No one deserves to live with that kind of darkness. You think you are too damaged for love? I know I am. Kira felt her heart break a little at the certainty in his voice. This strong, capable man believed he was unworthy of happiness. What if you are wrong? She asked softly. Ben looked at her with confusion. Wrong about what? What if someone could love you despite your scars and nightmares? What if someone saw your kindness and sacrifice instead of just your pain? That someone would be making a mistake, Ben said firmly. They would be choosing a life of difficulty and sorrow. Or they would be choosing someone who understands the cost of protecting others. Ben stared at her for a long moment. Princess, why are you asking me these things? Kira realized she was no longer afraid of him. Somewhere during their conversation, her fear had transformed into something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or even the beginning of respect. Because, she said carefully, I am beginning to think I may have judged you too quickly. Ben's scarred face showed surprise. You still rejected the marriage? Yes, Kira agreed. But maybe I rejected it for the wrong reasons. Your reasons were perfectly valid, were they? I rejected you because I thought you were a monster. But you are not a monster, are you? That depends on who you ask, Ben said quietly. I am asking you. Ben looked out at the stars again. I am a man who has done monstrous things for good reasons. Whether that makes me a monster is not for me to decide. Kira studied his profile in the starlight. I think, she said slowly, that monsters do not worry about whether they are monsters. Ben turned to look at her again. Princess, Kira, please, just Kira. Kira, he said, and her name sounded different in his deep voice. You should go back to your chambers and forget this conversation. Tomorrow you can tell your father that you still reject the marriage. I will support your decision. What if I do not want to reject it anymore? Ben's eyes widened. You cannot mean that. Cannot I? You were crying in the throne room. You called me a monster. I was wrong, Kira said simply. People can change their minds when they learn new information. Learning that I have nightmares and guilt is not new information that should make you want to marry me. Kira smiled at his confusion. Learning that you value my happiness above your mission is. Ben stood up from the bench suddenly. This is not wise, Kira. You barely know me. Then help me know you better. Why would you want to? Kira stood as well, facing him in the starlight. Because tonight you have shown me more honesty and kindness than any man ever has. Because you were willing to give up everything rather than force me into something I did not want. Because beneath all that pain and guilt I see someone worth knowing. Ben shook his head. You see what you want to see. Do I? Then tell me I am wrong. Tell me you are really the monster I thought you were. Ben opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. He could not lie to her, and they both knew it. I should go, he said finally. Will you think about what I said? Ben looked at her one more time, his dark eyes full of confusion and something that might have been hope. I will think about it, he promised. As he walked away, Kira remained in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Tomorrow she would have to make a decision that would affect not just her life, but the lives of millions of people across both their species. For the first time since learning about the arranged marriage, she was not afraid of that decision. She was curious about it. The next morning, Kira woke with a clear mind for the first time in days. Their conversation in the observation deck had changed everything she thought she knew about Ben Torres. Instead of fear, she felt curiosity burning inside her chest. She dressed quickly and made her way to the dining hall, hoping to see Ben again. When she arrived, she found him sitting alone at a small table near the windows. Several empty chairs surrounded him as if other diners had chosen to keep their distance. May I join you? Kira asked. Ben looked up from his meal with surprise. Of course, Princess, I'm just Kira, remember? Ben's lips curved into a small smile. Kira. She sat across from him and noticed he was eating simple food while reading reports on a datapad. His breakfast looked like military rations rather than the rich meals served to other diplomatic guests. You do not like our food? Kira asked. Your food is excellent, Ben replied. I am used to eating simple meals. Old habits from your military service? Yes, when you spend years eating from supply packs, fancy meals feel wrong somehow. Kira watched him eat with practiced efficiency. Everything about Ben spoke of discipline and self-control. Even the way he held his fork showed military training. What are you reading? She asked. Ben hesitated, then turned the datapad so she could see. Reports from human colonies near the border. I want to make sure my people are staying safe while I am here. Kira read over the information on the screen. Most of it described peaceful activities like farming and construction. One report mentioned a group of human children who had built a memorial for Valdorian civilians killed in the war. Your people build memorials for our dead? Kira asked with surprise. War affects everyone, Ben said quietly. Children on both sides lost parents and friends. Grief does not recognize species boundaries. But we were enemies. We were never enemies, Kira. Our governments were in conflict. Most ordinary people just wanted to live in peace. Kira studied his face as he spoke. There was no anger or hatred in his expression when he talked about Valdorians. Only sadness about the whole situation. Do you have family waiting for you on Earth? She asked. Ben's expression grew distant. Not really. My parents died when I was young. No brothers or sisters. Most of my friends were soldiers and many of them did not survive the war. You are alone? By choice, mostly. Military life does not leave much time for personal relationships. Kira felt another stab of sympathy for this lonely warrior. That must be difficult. It is safer, Ben said. People I care about cannot be hurt if I do not have people to care about. That is a very sad way to live. Ben looked at her with surprise. Most people think it is practical. Most people are wrong. Before Ben could respond, alarm sirens began wailing throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed red as automated voices announced a crisis. All passengers report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Ben was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to his weapon. What kind of emergency? He asked a passing Valdorian officer. Unknown ships approaching fast, the officer replied. They are not responding to communications. Ben's expression hardened into the cold mask Kira had seen during their first meeting. But now she understood it was not cruelty she was seeing. It was focus. "Kira, you need to get to a safe area," Ben said firmly. "Where are you going?" "To help defend this ship. You are a guest here. This is not your fight." Ben looked at her with intensity that took her breath away. "Any fight that threatens you is my fight." Before Kira could respond, Ben was moving toward the command center with the speed and purpose of a trained warrior. She followed him despite his orders to seek safety. The command center buzzed with activity when they arrived. Emperor Thek stood in the middle of the chaos, giving orders to his officers. Tactical displays showed 3 unknown ships closing in on their position. "Your Majesty," Ben said as he approached the Emperor, "request permission to assist with ship defense." Emperor Thex looked at Ben with surprise. "Colonel Torres, you are our guest. We cannot ask you to risk yourself for our safety." "You are not asking," Ben replied. "I am volunteering. The attacking ships appear to be raiders," one officer reported. "Probably Khazrim pirates looking for valuable cargo." Ben studied the tactical displays with expert eyes. Those ship configurations suggest they plan to board rather than destroy. They want prisoners and salvage. "Our escort ships can handle 3 pirate vessels," another officer said confidently. "Maybe," Ben replied. "But if they get past your escorts and reach this ship, you will need help defending the corridors and vital areas." Emperor Thex considered this. "You would help defend my ship and my daughter?" "With my life," Ben said without hesitation. Kira felt her heart skip at the certainty in his voice. He barely knew her, yet he was willing to fight and die to protect her. "Very well," Emperor Thex decided. "You have my permission to coordinate with our security teams." Ben bowed quickly and turned toward the security stations. Kira followed him. "Ben, wait!" she called. He stopped and turned back to her. "You need to get to the secured areas with the other civilians." "I want to help. This is not a game." "Kira, people are going to die today. All the more reason I should help save lives instead of hiding." Ben studied her face for a moment. "Can you use medical equipment?" "Yes, all Valdorian nobility learn basic medical skills." "Then set up a treatment area in the secured section. When this is over, there will be wounded who need care." Kira nodded and started to leave, then turned back. "Ben, yes? Be careful." Something soft flashed in Ben's dark eyes. "I will try." Kira made her way to the secured civilian area, but instead of hiding, she organized the other passengers to create a medical station. Using supplies from the ship's medical bay, they set up beds and equipment to treat injuries. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear updates about the battle. The escort ships engaged the pirates, but 2 raider vessels broke through and attached to the main hull. "Boarding parties detected on decks 7 and 12, came the announcement. "All security teams respond." Kira worked to prepare medical supplies, but her thoughts kept drifting to Ben. Was he safe? Was he fighting in the corridors right now? Her questions were answered when the first wounded began arriving. Valdorian security officers carried in their injured comrades, and Kira began treating plasma burns and blade wounds. "How bad is the fighting?" she asked one of the officers. "Bad," he replied grimly. "The pirates have advanced weapons and combat armor. We are holding them, but barely." "What about the human, Colonel Torres?" The officer's expression changed to one of amazement. "The human is incredible, Princess. I've never seen anyone fight like that." "What do you mean?" "He saved my entire squad. We were trapped in a corridor with pirates on both sides. The human appeared out of nowhere and cleared both groups by himself. Then he made sure we got medical treatment before moving on to the next fight." Kira felt pride and worry mixing in her chest. Ben was risking his life for people he had just met. More wounded arrived over the next hour. Each one had stories about Ben's actions during the battle. He had rescued trapped civilians, protected wounded officers, and fought with skill that seemed impossible. "He moves like a ghost," one soldier reported. "The pirates cannot touch him." "He carried Commander Vex to safety after Vex took a plasma hit to the chest," said another. "Vex weighs twice what the human does, but Torres carried him like he weighed nothing." Finally, the announcement came that all pirates had been either captured or eliminated. The ship was secure. Kira waited anxiously for Ben to appear, but he did not come to the medical area. "Where is Colonel Torres?" she asked one of the returning officers. "Still helping with cleanup and prisoner processing," the officer replied. "He refuses medical treatment until all our people are cared for." Kira left the medical station in the hands of other volunteers and went looking for Ben. She found him on Deck 7, helping repair damaged systems. His uniform was torn and burned, and blood ran from cuts on his arms and face. "Ben," she called out. He looked up from the control panel he was fixing. "Kira, you should not be here. This area is not fully secured yet. You are hurt." Ben looked down at his wounds as if noticing them for the first time. "Nothing serious. Let me treat those cuts. I am fine. There are others who need help more than I do." Kira moved closer and saw that his injuries were worse than he was admitting. One cut on his shoulder looked deep and burn marks covered his left arm. "You will come with me to the medical area right now," she said firmly. "Kira, that is a royal command." "Colonel Torres." Ben blinked in surprise, then smiled slightly. "I suppose I have to obey royal commands." Back in the medical area, Kira personally treated Ben's wounds. As she cleaned the cuts and applied healing gel, she noticed new scars on his arms and shoulders. Some looked recent. "How many battles have you fought?" she asked. "Too many," Ben replied. "Do you ever get tired of it? The fighting and violence?" Ben was quiet while she bandaged a particularly deep cut. Finally he said, "Every day. But someone has to stand between innocent people and those who would hurt them. Why does it have to be you?" "Because I can. Because I have the skills and training. Because when I was young, no one stood between me and the people who hurt me." Kira paused in her work. "Someone hurt you when you were a child?" Ben nodded slowly. "My parents were killed in a pirate raid similar to today's attack. I was 12 years old, hiding in a closet while strangers destroyed everything I loved. Ben, I am so sorry. After that, I decided no other child should have to hide in a closet while their family dies, so I learned to fight." Kira understood now why Ben was so willing to help others, even strangers. He was fighting his own childhood trauma by protecting people who could not protect themselves. "Today, when you chose to help defend our ship," she said carefully, "you risked your life for people you barely know." "Yes. Why?" Ben met her eyes. "Because it was right. Because you were in danger. Because sometimes protecting others is the only way to make sense of all the pain in the universe." Kira finished treating his wounds in thoughtful silence. When she was done, Ben started to stand, but she placed a hand on his arm to stop him. "Ben, I need to tell you something." "What?" "Today I watched my people come back from battle with stories about your courage and kindness. I saw you refuse medical care until everyone else was treated first. I watched you risk everything to protect strangers. I was doing my job." "No," Kira said firmly. "You were doing much more than your job. You were being exactly the kind of person I want to spend my life with." Ben stared at her in shock. "Kira, I want to accept the marriage arrangement. You cannot mean that." "I absolutely mean it. 2 days ago I rejected you because I thought you were a monster. Now I know the truth. You are not a monster, Ben Torres. You are a hero." Ben shook his head. "I am not a hero. I am just a soldier trying to do the right thing. That is exactly what makes you a hero. Kira, you do not understand what you would be getting into. I have nightmares. I carry weapons everywhere. I see threats that are not there. I am damaged goods." Kira took his scarred hands in hers. "You think your scars make you unworthy of love. But they do not. They prove you have stood between evil and innocence even when it cost you everything. I would not be an easy husband. I would not be an easy wife. I am stubborn and spoiled and used to getting my way." Ben almost smiled at that. "I noticed. We both have flaws, Ben, but we also have something rare. We understand each other. We both know what it means to put duty before personal comfort. Your duty was to marry for political reasons. Mine was to accept that marriage for the same reasons." "No," Kira corrected. "Your duty was to protect innocent people and work for peace. My duty was to do what is best for my people. Marrying someone I respect and admire is best for everyone." Ben looked into her eyes, searching for doubt or deception. "You really want this?" "I really want this." "The question is, do you?" Ben was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "I want it more than I have ever wanted anything in my life, but I am afraid I will disappoint you." "You will disappoint me sometimes," Kira said honestly. "I will disappoint you too. That is what marriage is about, learning to love someone despite their flaws." "Despite their flaws?" Kira smiled. "Or maybe because of them. Your scars tell the story of a man who cares more about others than himself. Your nightmares prove you have a conscience. Your loneliness shows how much you have sacrificed for duty. These are not flaws, Ben. They are proof of your character. Ben lifted one hand to touch her face gently. Are you sure about this? Really sure? I have never been more sure of anything. What if your father objects to your change of heart? Then we will convince him together. Ben leaned forward and rested his forehead against hers. Kira, I promise you this. I will spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust, and I promise you this. I will spend every day helping you believe you are worthy of love. They held each other in the medical area, while the ship continued its journey toward Earth. Around them, wounded soldiers recovered from the battle. The crisis had passed, but it had also revealed the truth about Ben's character. Later that evening, they found Emperor Thex in his private chambers. He looked up from his reports when they entered together. Father, Kira said, I want to speak with you about the marriage arrangement. Emperor Thex studied their joined hands with interest. I see, and what do you wish to say? I want to accept Colonel Torres's proposal. Yesterday you called him a monster. Yesterday I was wrong. Emperor Thex turned his attention to Ben. And you, Colonel? Yesterday you seemed willing to give up the alliance rather than force an unwilling bride. I am still willing to do that, Your Majesty, Ben replied, but I am hoping it will not be necessary. What changed your mind, daughter? Kira squeezed Ben's hand. Today I learned the difference between cruelty and strength. I learned that the scars on his face came from saving innocent people, not hurting them. I learned that he would risk his life to protect strangers, including me. You saw him fight, I saw him care. The fighting was just how he expressed that caring. Emperor Thex nodded slowly. Colonel Torres, when the pirates attacked today, you could have stayed safe in the guest quarters. Why did you choose to help us? Because protecting innocent people is not something you do only when it is convenient, Ben answered. It is something you do because it is right. Even for former enemies. We were never enemies, Your Majesty. We were people caught on different sides of a terrible situation. Emperor Thex stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. This marriage alliance was designed to prevent future wars between our species. But perhaps it has become something more. What do you mean? Kira asked. Perhaps it has become a genuine partnership between two people who understand the cost of peace. He turned back to face them. You have my blessing, both of you. But I want one promise from each of you. Anything, Kira said. Promise me you will remember this feeling. When marriage becomes difficult, when you disagree about important things, when the pressures of leadership test your relationship, remember why you chose each other. I promise, Ben said solemnly. I promise too, Kira agreed. Emperor Thex smiled for the first time since Ben had arrived. Then let us plan a wedding that will celebrate not just an alliance between governments, but a union between two hearts. 3 weeks later, Kira stood in the royal chapel wearing a gown that combined Valdorian and human traditions. Ben waited for her at the altar, handsome in his formal military dress uniform. His scars were still visible, but now Kira saw them as marks of honor rather than signs of violence. As they spoke their vows to each other, representatives from both species watched with hope for the future. The marriage they had once seen as a political necessity had become something beautiful. When Ben promised to love and protect Kira for the rest of his life, she saw tears in his dark eyes. When she promised to stand beside him through all of life's battles, she meant every word. The union of the alien princess and the scarred human warrior became a symbol of what was possible when fear gave way to understanding. Their love story proved that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships could create the strongest bonds. And in the years that followed, as peace flourished between their species, people would remember that it all began when a princess stopped seeing scars and started seeing the hero beneath them.